Remember how the Vermont floods happened? We all cared a ton for like 2 days, then never checked back in with how folks recovered? Spoiler alert, it wasn't great. Here's how I learned how FEMA, the state, and several other resources either helped or didn't. So I was chilling in my dining room working on a video, but then my buddy Urian called me and told me,
yo, there's a tooth in the wall in Montpelier.
So I headed to our state's capital, and sure enough,
It's on a hill, a random ass street.
there it was. A giant molar mysteriously embedded into the side of the embankment on East State Street.
Yo, did you find the tooth yet?
I thought, neat. Guess I'll get back to work. But as I headed back, I noticed the town seemed quieter than its normal bustlings of tourists and politicians, replaced with the silence of numerous closed shops or the bangings of various construction projects. I thought, is this still because of the flood a year ago? You know, I hadn't really seen any news outlets report on the aftermath, just capitalize on showing the crazy damages, then move on. Curious, I decided to ask around. How did businesses recover? Did they recover? Did they get the government support we all assumed they would get? What was it actually like going through and experiencing this?
We had heard that it was going to start flooding, possibly getting like 2 to 3 inches of water on the floors of the record store.
Every time there'd be a little storm forecast, they'd be like, oh, you know, barricade the doors. Nothing ever happened. So people just got complacent, myself included.
It's just going to get the floors wet. And you mop them out, and it's like a really gross day, but then you run the fans, and pretty soon you can open back up.
And what I think most people did is we moved everything like 2 feet off the floor.
Everything in the store got elevated up like 3 feet.
And we said that should be fine. And it was not fine.
I saw water coming high up on the river. There's like water up outside the building. Okay, there's an inch of water coming in the floor. Okay, it's a foot. And I was like, all right, now I'm getting uncomfortable. I checked back like 30 minutes later and the water had knocked over racks.
It was about a foot in the back of the building, up to 3 feet in the sheetrock.
We had, you know, over 300,000 gallons of water in the basement.
Floor to ceiling, the ceiling was falling down because it had been waterlogged.
Where we're sitting right now was a river, rushing water. It probably would come up to, you know, our knees.
Most of the records were like the bottom half of them.
It's where all of our walk-ins are, where we store not only dry goods, but also refrigerated items.
Every shelving unit, stereo equipment, turntables, my entire bass amp and bass rig.
All of it got totally fucked.
The whole room was devastated.
Everything was just like totally ruined.
The city of Barre made the brilliant decision to turn the power off. So all of our pumps that we had downstairs that were working wicked hard stopped, and it just filled up very quickly.
What was their reasoning?
Electrical fires, stuff like that, which I get it.
I got a delivery that day, $8,000 worth, that I also elevated like a huge, like getting ready for like the summer tourist boom. I remember thinking, I'm gonna unbox these tomorrow. This will all just be Tuesday's project. I watched those boxes from a security camera, like in water on the floor, and I couldn't cross from my house to do anything about it.
I was here trying to like get shit off the floor and do whatever I could. Our grease traps on our 3-bay sinks, they all backed up and like they were fountains. Everything's filling up with this nasty ass, you know, silty
Sewage, like toxic sludge, nightmare mud.
anything the water touched essentially we had to throw it away. Even if it was like a bottle of sauce that wasn't open, it's still like no-go.
Ironically, like the first record that like hit the water was probably Taylor Swift. $2,000 worth of Taylor Swift records were the first things to go. I literally had just purchased a Velvet Underground and Nico first press. I remember like pulling out that record and just seeing like the top of the banana and the bottom was like rotten.
Yeah, we had to throw a lot of shit away.
It was just like insane.
It sucked.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. We were closed for 4 months.
4 months.
It was a long 2 months, I'll tell you what.
Our door was so warped. I couldn't even like lock or close the door. And I remember thinking like, holy shit. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's nothing to protect in here anymore.
First 2 days after the flood, I think we were the only restaurant in town open. Actually never came into the restaurant, so we were like crushed with the amount of food that we were trying to put out.
You know, it looked like a war zone.
There was a shit show out here.
We basically just had like an unlocked door for months. People would just like be in here. I would come in to clean up like 9 in the morning and there'd be like somebody just walking around.
A lot of them were grifters and scammers. Literally overnight, all these people descended from out of state.
The vultures come quick. When car hits meat, vultures smell that, they know that. And that was here on July 12th.
You know, with their hard hat and their clipboard, they seemed to come out of the woodwork and they were like, we're here to help you.
There were folks out there who were just like pawing through thousands of dollars worth of my stuff is destroyed, trying to like make a buck while everybody else is like getting to work. Do not ever play these records. They're covered in sewage. You're gonna ruin your needle.
Thankfully, I think the Northeast have this like sort of natural distrust and this like, I'm all shit kind of attitude.
I told some people like straight up, get the fuck out of here right now and like, I don't ever want to see you again. I was like, you can help me haul this shit out of the basement, but like, you're not gonna go like fishing.
And we had it few scammy people come through here, and like these guys who cleaned the floor one day, they were actually, I think they were probably just homeless guys, had done all this work and then like demanded way too much money. The landlord kind of had to cough it up.
People were DMing us from Philadelphia, from Boston. Hey man, I'd be happy to take those wet records off your hands, asking me to ship shit-covered records for free to their house so they could flip them. This flood brought out everyone's true colors. Like the sickness inside of them was like something that I wish I didn't have to experience, but at the same time, I learned a lot from it.
I think we were all kind of in shock. Okay, we all just made it through COVID. Now we've got to deal with this.
I was so crushed and scared and like alone in this.
The thought of like cleaning your own space, assessing it all, and then this is your home essentially and your business, your livelihood, and it's really overwhelming. I was in a kind of a state of shock. I did not want to deal with it.
I mean, I remember like tons of guys who had driven up, you know, here's my card, handing me this like clean white card, and me like grabbing it with my hand that was just covered. Give me a call if you want to do business together. And I was like, anywhere I put this card, it's going to be like in garbage right now, yes.
It was also like a lot of weeks of trash heaped on the streets, piled up taller than you are.
And it's starting to mold, and you would come downtown and it's literally smelly.
Random homeless people wandering around, picking through the trash and stuff. I didn't recognize anyone on the streets. It smelled, it was gross, it smelled in here, it smelled out there.
I felt like they took a really long time picking up the trash.
They said, put your trash out, and everybody did, like 2 days after the flood. They cleaned it all up. Then all the real trash started to come out. Huge piles in like these restaurants with like massive pieces of equipment and stuff. And they didn't come around for like what felt like weeks. The city basically was just like, oh yeah, Parks Department's dealing with it. They were like invisible, not a word. And then I remember like looking out the door and going like, who would come here? It's just like a zombie land out there.
But I'm sure stuff like that is hard to negotiate when there's some kind of devastation like that.
It's probably not so much their fault because they're trying to get the money to move and the wheels to move, and it's the bureaucracy.
The state actually, for safety concerns, had all their employees stay out of the flood zone a week and a half, 2 weeks after it happened.
There wasn't like cops going around to every door being like, this is gonna be a big one.
No one came by our business and asked what we needed from the city.
Have you seen this tooth on East State Street in the wall?
No. Actually, maybe I've heard of it.
No.
I've never seen it, but I've heard of it. I can't remember who told me about it. Now I'm gonna have to go find it, but I don't know anything about it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can't help you.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yo, did you find the tooth yet?
I knew I needed the space back.
We were pulling everything up from the basement, taking pictures for insurance.
There was 5 layers of floors, and that all had to come out.
We had no power for 7 weeks.
Finding pumps was a big thing.
We needed fans. Everybody was using fans. I remember fans and dehumidifiers. We had purchased some, and then some just would show up. And then someone came to our space, brought it somewhere else, and we never saw it again.
And it was like a full remodel, basically.
Everything was word of mouth. Cell phones didn't work, I remember that. My phone got so hot in my pocket searching for signal that I thought that I had like burned myself. And I pulled it out, my phone was like almost melted. So we didn't have any way to communicate with people. I couldn't let people know where I was. So it was a lot of just like walking and wandering around.
The contractors were just inundated with work. That was probably the biggest hurdle in all of it. We had to wait months for some of this stuff to get fixed and cleaned up.
It was hard in October, and we didn't even try until then.
All the local businesses that could deal with it were like immediately booked up solid.
For us to be like, hey, we need custom record racks, while people still needed homes, it was like not in our headspace to say.
On their end, like getting materials, that was a big hurdle to jump over too.
I mean, I hadn't purchased lumber and screws since COVID, and I felt like the mom in Arrested Development being like, wait, what? Like, this is 4 times what I paid for it in 2019. Late September, early October, RK Miles, the lumberyard burned down. Like, the thing that everybody needs is now in ashes on the ground.
I ended up doing a lot of the work myself. None of the licensed work, of course, because I would never do that.
New sheetrock around the entire building, all new equipment.
You become so dehydrated. I think I probably would drink up to like 2 gallons of water in a 6-hour period. Like the Poland Springs that are like really crackly, I call them like suck and chucks. You basically like drink it like, and then you would just crush it. And I remember there was just plastic water bottles everywhere. People would just drop bottles of water at your door. You would walk down to the tents and get like bottles of water. And you could tell people who were drinking water versus people who weren't drinking water, because it became this kind of animal, like creepy crawly kind of vibe where people were like, looked like they were out of their minds. So essential that I never would have thought. Almost like in a really fucked up video game. Yeah, we had no idea, man. We had no idea what to do. Yeah.
The most common problems that people brought in were mental health or substance use. Mechanics that seemed very tough who were starting to cry and saying, when I close my eyes, I just see floodwater and then I drink too much. That's my struggle right this moment. And we were hearing that a lot and a lot and a lot from people that you wouldn't normally expect. It was the most common thing that we got asked for.
We estimated the cost of last year's loss to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $55,000.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
In excess of $100,000.
46,000.
We ultimately cataloged about $500 million of damage for the whole region.
We were expecting like $175,000 in like the summer months.
They were our 4 busiest months, so July, August, September, and October.
And like the early fall.
Summer and tourist season.
If we had been open, we would have probably made like $175,000, yeah.
It'll probably cost me around 30, and it costs money that I didn't really have.
We don't have flood insurance because it's outrageously expensive.
I've looked at flood insurance before. I mean, we couldn't afford that and to still be like a successful business.
Especially for a place this big.
We're in a floodplain. When they insure there, they know what is gonna happen.
My insurance totally screwed me. The guy was super rude and dickish on the phone. They're just like, oh, nope, sorry, bud, good luck. And I tried to drop them, and my broker was like, yeah, there's no other companies. It's just like,
We were also one of the businesses that did have flood insurance. We were able to get a lot of stuff back because of that.
Here's where we kind of got lucky. Since the city turned the electric off, we called it loss of product due to electrical failure or something. If it was just the flooding, if they didn't turn the electric off, we wouldn't have gotten a cent. It wasn't a ton of money. It was basically all, the perishable items that we lost, maybe a dough mixer.
When it comes to like records, it's like, I'm gonna tell somebody like, hey, we had one of these, and they're gonna pay out, what, 20 cents, 18 cents on the dollar? It definitely felt like there was no way to even explain what it's like to lose a mint condition Karen Dalton record. They're gonna Google, oh, the repress here is $15. We'll give you 6. It was not gonna ever work for flood insurance to like understand what we do.
Do you know about the tooth that's stuck in the wall on East State Street?
no. Like it was poured in with the concrete kind of thing? Because somebody didn't take a bite of the wall, and maybe they dug up somebody's remains, and while they were mixing the concrete, made its way to the outside. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I didn't even know it existed. I'll go up there and look for it. That's funny.
Yo, did you find the tooth yet?
So we received around $20,000 from various grants.
They had a BGAP fund that the governor made a big show about.
BGAP, I think we got a little bit.
We did receive some BGAP, but not the full amounts.
Like BGAP or anything like that?
No.
Were you able to get any funds from the BGAP?
Yeah, but not till December.
It helped, but took a little bit longer and was a little bit more confusing.
It started out it was going to be 10% of what your physical loss was. Well, who's that going to help? 10%. And then I got to wait 6 months for it? I needed that money after the flood.
We didn't jump on the EIDL.
We didn't take out any EIDL loans.
I don't remember getting anything from Capstone, but really the Barre area development, that was the thing that we really got the most help from.
So you would say that the Barre area development, the bad was actually good?
It was very good.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, it was just sitting there.
And then we did receive some from Montpelier Alive, and they were so helpful with their grants as well, like getting money quickly.
Montpelier Alive really stepped up, and they did during COVID too.
Set up a volunteer tent over by Shaw's. You could go and ask for volunteers to muck out your basement or move stuff or throw stuff away. If you needed water for your volunteers, or if you needed food or literally any kind of supplies.
And they brought the businesses together, and they galvanized the downtown businesses.
It was extremely, extremely helpful.
We got a check for $3,000 from a guy who was walking on the street handing out checks to businesses. He was like, this is just to support reopen possibilities into that.
We're just showing up to lend hands. They were like, we took the week off because we saw how sad it was and we came to help.
He was part of an organization that was from Manchester, Vermont. That's all I remember. So much was happening at this time. I mean, you gotta imagine that it was I'm like, did I dream that? Yeah, or am I holding a snake?
We sourced over $250,000. Half the money came from the band Fish, and that was really weird. We opened the mail and it was just a check. We weren't expecting it. We didn't know about it. We didn't even think it was real.
So what you're saying is I should probably stop talking shit about fish.
No.
Everything that you see here, we just kept rubbing 2 pennies together to get a nickel. We would sell a record and buy 2 more records. We would sell 2 records and buy 3 records.
I did my own GoFundMe last year. I paid off the contractor and had to take out a loan, and
We still took out loans,
I'm still behind.
which we haven't paid off yet. I'm still paying off the debt on top of the grants, on top of the GoFundMe,
I'm gonna restart a GoFundMe this year.
just to get to where we are today. Come buy a record.
Really the community stepping up and not waiting for FEMA, which we didn't get anything from. We tried. Yeah, we applied.
Did you ever hear back?
Nope.
People had the perception FEMA would come in, they would get $10, $20, $100,000. That's not true.
We had been given this kind of clear indication from both FEMA and our landlord that like there was no support for businesses from FEMA.
Eventually somebody came down, but it was days later. We had already cleaned up the majority of everything. And I don't even know if we were offered anything, to be honest with you. At that point, it was already too late. We wanted to get back into business. We wanted to be part of opening up this city again. I just feel like, what is the point of that organization at this point?
FEMA is kind of like the HR at a big company. They're the accuracy police. Their real mission is to check your receipts. They're not bringing a lot of aid dollars. They're verifying that information is correct.
Even my home, I live right here in Barre. We had kind of a landslide on my property. They had the state geologist come out and he was straight up. He was like, I wouldn't spend any more money on this piece of your land right here. I wouldn't even come out here and hang out.
You could build a slide.
There you go.
Have you heard of the tooth that's stuck in the wall?
No. And it's in there, you can't like wiggle it out. Get a dentist out there and get like an impression of it. Somebody's got to know.
Yo, did you find the tooth yet?
A business owner can only take out an SBA loan, and those loans are at a 4 to 8% interest, but it's a loan. The problem with this loan, the federal government, best case scenario, they would have a profit of $50 million of interest off of this disaster. You have to make more money tomorrow than you made yesterday. So if you're adding a loan on top of that situation, you're going to bankrupt yourself.
Yeah, the government, I mean, it's forms that are asking for forms.
They made the process ridiculously onerous.
And you need forms to fill out the forms.
And they acted put out if you hassled them.
You do everything perfectly, and then there's no explanation as to why your grant was denied.
They were bouncing back people's applications, all this crap.
You have to prove that you own the business, what the business costs, that you owned this equipment, that you have insurance, or you didn't have insurance.
I don't know if you've ever filled out grant forms before. They basically treat it like Ticketmaster, where it's like, show up, fight for your life, and we'll let you know if there's a raft for you.
We knew that people were going to be at a disadvantage. People had lost their paperwork, they'd lost their laptops.
They treated us like we were a bunch of like out-of-state grifters. This state is so small. We all see each other and we all know each other, and yet when something like this happens, we want to make sure you're not scamming us for the funds. Then come down here and look at my trashed basement and see my situation if you're really concerned. This is a small state. They could have made a 15-minute phone call to every single business owner, got all the information they needed, and moved on.
It took a while for help to come in terms of like financially.
It was so needless.
Every other kind of support was there.
You know, I'm just thinking about like other businesses. They're going to give up and move on.
You have to have a pretty strong fluency in English when you're doing all these forms. 20% of the flood impacted businesses are owned by people of color or new Americans. That meant that they were often out of the loop of the resources, and if they did find someone, they often had the experience of not getting calls back. We were the only supplier of language services in 23 flood. We had to find people in the community to act as interpreters. Thai was the hardest, so finally I went out of the flood zone, went to a Thai restaurant. And I pointed at the youngest looking person and I said, do you speak Thai? Because I heard him speaking English. And he said, of course. Now he is my intern. He had a master's degree in economics.
The communities are coming together. The communities are figuring out, and they have to. The government is failing. Sorry, I'm just going to say it. I'm sure they would be like, we are doing our best, blah, blah, blah. They come around, they're all smiles, they're all handshakes, they're all like, we're going to make sure that you're taking care, and then nothing happens. Some agency in the state, very nice people, well-meaning people. He's like, I can help you out because Efficiency Vermont has grant money, but they're going to close up their grants because nobody was applying. Maybe your website's really hard for people to navigate. Maybe that's why nobody's applying. I met with the guy, we talked to a contractor, blah, 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 and like nothing. And then I talked to the guy next door and he said, hey man, did they ever help you? I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, they fucked me too. I'm going to probably have to just go find someone who'll just do it for much cheaper. I've given up dealing with Efficiency Vermont. You have to use their contractors and you have to use, like, the attitude of the government in the city is just like, ugh.
The legislature was out of session the second week of the fiscal year. All the budgets, all the programs already been allocated. So you don't start off the fiscal year with a big reserve of money.
They're not really dealing with it. And then when they can't deal with it, they take a very defensive stance about it. What's happening is the communities are figuring it out and they're coming together, and the government is like going, well, I guess they didn't need us after all. It's not a good look. I'll just say that.
I don't believe that the forms that I fill out, that all this stuff is going to actually lead to me having more support. I'm like, it's going to be people love us or they don't. Yeah. And people showed up and loved us, and that was it was huge. It was just the GoFundMe that pushed us forward.
But I would say the number one thing is just neighbors looking out for each other.
Yeah, it was the community, absolutely, yeah.
And all these volunteers came, so they were great.
It was a a like true community effort.
We had people coming in here that we had never seen before, no idea who they were, with boots ready to shovel shit out of our basement.
The people who have supported this business through getting records, and now they were just trusting us enough to go out and do it again.
Friends, you know, other business owners, people that we did know were here immediately.
I got to know other business owners in Montpelier a lot better.
Kind of networking with our other business owner friends.
The fact that volunteers came was, I think, super helpful because it let everybody know we had support. We weren't just on our own.
We wouldn't be here without the support of like hundreds and hundreds of people.
And I think a lot of us who had been through COVID, survived that shit, were like, we're not going down. And the difference too between this and COVID was that COVID, everybody just disappeared. Here, everybody came together. A lot of people are sort of recognizing and getting to the place where they're not waiting around for the state to figure it out. Honestly, I think it's not the worst thing in the world. It's probably better.
You know, our landlord here is amazing.
Our landlord is awesome.
The landlord is great.
He got like, you know, this $1,200 3-inch trash pump blowing water out from downstairs. When we were done with it, he gave it to our neighbors.
Day two, they had probably 45 different businesses that were all submerged underwater between Barre and Montpelier. They checked on everybody, including us, like the smallest of their potatoes.
He's putting a generator on the roof, so if they do shut the power off, our pumps will still work.
They redid the floors, they redid the walls and everything. Absolutely like legendary dudes. I knew people who did not have the same fortune that we did. So, I mean, there's a lot of absentee landlords, a lot of out-of-state landlords, and there's guys who thought that Montpelier was like a quick grab for real estate. A couple years ago, you know, never showed up.
We had a couple of city council members that were on the streets helping out and spreading the word, so I appreciate all the hard work that they did.
There's no saviors. There's no government savior that's gonna sweep in and fix it all. We have to start waking up and taking care of each other. And it's hard because it's like, of course, they just reopened a new B gap. I'm gonna apply for it, of course I am, but I'm not attached to whether or not I get money from that.
There's been a lot of talk and there's been a lot of ideas thrown around, but I don't know what else we need or what else we could do.
We got to figure out something, you know, as a community, like, because it's gonna happen again.
It's gonna happen every year.
The biggest fucked up part of all of this was it was to the day.
The day, like a horror movie.
To the day of last year's flooding.
Where this is all happening again.
This year we had about 4 feet in our basement.
We did have, you know, maybe 2 inches of water in like the deepest corner of the basement down there.
Most people aren't using their basements anymore.
We don't keep anything down there anymore, so it wasn't as much of an issue.
We didn't lose any product. We didn't lose any equipment this time around. No water came into the actual dining space.
I saw the municipalities using social media to talk to their citizens.
They didn't turn the power off, so the pumps were able to work and do their job. No fires.
Should they predict high water again, I can take everything out of the room.
I could get these things out to anyone's car. 20 seconds, it's like...
Just the floors and the walls will be left. It can get torn out easily or dried out, and so that we wouldn't be without a space for as long as we were last.
We bought stackable crates. Everything can be put up to like 6 feet.
So we were only closed for I think 1 day, and then we started doing takeout foods. We still kept the dining room closed. Pretty much everybody stayed open. We feel really, really lucky that it wasn't as intense as it was last year. You know, in the north end here in Barre, it was still devastating. All the rebuilding that they were still doing from last year just pretty much got wiped out. Pile that on again this year, it's like heartbreaking to see.
There's been 2 floods now where the river's gotten scary since last July.
We haven't had a lot of disasters at this level in Vermont before.
This is gonna be a yearly thing. Like there's gotta be something we can do.
What I wish would happen was somebody had come from an organization that was just like, here's the protocols for this town. We have trucks coming that are gonna pick up garbage. If you want it thrown out, put it on the curb. If you believe something here is at risk, please let somebody know so we can get out of here. Like if you have food stuff, I mean, like there were restaurants that was just like, there was rancid meat running out into the street and there was no protocol for that.
You know, A, find ways to mitigate flooding, but also B, find some way to finance the recovery programs. You know, I would encourage our city council members to find whether it's new technologies or some way to fund recovery programs.
On the state level, I think we need a fund all the time for flood. We need immediate cash for business owners, not a loan, that a fund of around $50 million should always exist with rules and parameters and whatever they need.
Do you know if any state legislators are working towards that?
Yeah.
Have they drafted like a bill or anything?
I don't think so.
Honestly, small businesses like mine, we don't have the money to do this every year, you know? If we got it this year like we did last year, we might not be talking right now, me and you.
I still think things are not normal. Some of the tourists don't know if they can come here.
Tourism has definitely had a huge impact.
There was a lot of places still closed during tourist season last year, and again, like Vermont has had crazy floods since then, and I think people aren't aware of the state of where we're at.
Capitol Plaza Hotel being closed for so long had a big impact because that could be 200 people a day.
Is that close, do you know?
About 8 to 9 months.
There's some businesses that literally didn't open until like June and July, a year later, or they moved or they closed.
The foot traffic is down. People's patterns have changed.
A lot of the state workers aren't back in their buildings and working remote a lot more.
They weren't eating their meals in Montpelier. They weren't buying gifts.
We used to bring in like 8,000 people to town every day.
We still don't have an active post office in Montpelier. It's just the boxes. You can't buy stamps, you can't mail a package. So for red tape bureaucracy reasons, we did a little analysis of just how much money it was costing the businesses, $18,000 to $38,000 a year in additional costs. Even us, my little nonprofit, is about $18,000 a year.
When you look at the way that streets and the river can join in this town,
We did build our little city on where three rivers meet.
and now when these sorts of things happen, there's like a very uncomfortable movement that happens for the rivers, which is what causes them to rise the way they do.
Pretty horrible having all of these things back to back.
Our street like lowers down. Like we have a slope on this street that like means when things get wet, we get wet first.
I've only owned the business for 5 years and I'm like, holy crap, what's next?
Well, we got that triple E thing with the mosquitoes. You see
Oh
that?
yeah.
It doesn't take much water to mess a record up.
I don't know what the answer is.
But I'm expecting that every July we have to have a team in place. Traveling in July doesn't seem safe to me anymore.
Yo, did you find the tooth yet?
You know about the tooth on East State Street?
I do, actually. Yeah.
You know about the tooth?
And someone's like, have you seen the tooth in the wall? And I thought they were asking me about like some like shoegaze band or something like that. You know what I mean? Like some like post-rock band or whatever it was. I think I remember seeing it for the last time like a year ago.
So I was informed that the tooth was put there in the 1980s by a city worker named, I shit you not, Pee Wee Lee, while patching the wall for the town. According to the Brave Little State episode I was linked, he had gotten it pulled that morning and was planning on scaring his son about dental hygiene health, but ultimately decided,
I said, well, I'll give the city of Montpelier something to talk about that nobody else has. Here remains the immortal tooth of James Pee Wee Lee, placed here after a dentist appointment.
From the dining room, I'm Jonny Wanzer, and I'll see you outside. Yeah, bro, I saw the damn tooth.
Awesome.